The Atlanta Falcons are holding Kirk Cousins hostage, and they need to do the right thing and let him go. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to talk about who's going to win more games, J.J. McCarthy's Minnesota Vikings or Aaron Rodgers' new team. Talk about why the Cincinnati Bengals need to trade Trey Hendrickson, and we'll start with the hostage situation going on in Atlanta, Georgia. Before we dive into all of it, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. But again, there is a hostage situation going on in Atlanta, and I throw it to my guy Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons to give us the scoop.
There's a hostage crisis in Atlanta with Kirk Cousins. I'm Aaron Freeman with Locked On Falcons. Falcons GM Terry Fontenot said in January that they're comfortable keeping Kirk Cousins as a backup. He became a man of his word this weekend, with the Falcons opting by multiple reports to cut Kirk Cousins ahead of the $10 million roster bonus that is due this week. In 2026, that becomes fully guaranteed once that deadline passes. And the Falcons clearly believe that by keeping Cousins, that they will get something for him via trade to make it all worth it, including a potential late round draft pick. Time will tell on that. I'm very skeptical that a trade will happen between now and the draft. But perhaps after the draft, once all the dust settles, some team will be willing to come and pay the ransom for Kirk Cousins, which is the remaining $37.5 million in guaranteed money out of the $100 million in guaranteed money that the Falcons gave Kirk Cousins last offseason before his poor play led to a benching 14 games into the 2024 season in favor of first-round draft pick Michael Penix. Trading him is the only path forward that's going to justify this decision over this weekend. We'll see if the Falcons can figure it all out. Make sure you follow this ongoing hostage crisis by following Locked On Falcons, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I've been that hostage.
Let that man
Aaron.
free.
I get it.
Let that man free. Listen, I'm going to go back. Other than just the situation right now, they signed him, and we have heard all the reports that they did not advise that they were going to take Michael Penix in the top 10. If they would have told him that, he probably would not have signed there. So they did.
Which is what happened in Minnesota.
Exactly.
They were like, we're going to take you down. He was like, okay, bye.
Now we need to make it right. Now they need to make it right. They're holding that man hostage, and there are teams out there that could use him. The Cleveland Browns make sense. The New York Giants, if they miss out on Rodgers. The Tennessee Titans, if they ultimately do decide to trade back in the draft, which I expect them to take Cam Ward. But if they are playing the long con here and they want to trade back in the draft, Kirk Cousins for the Tennessee Titans with a trade back with the Giants so the Giants can get Cam Ward, that makes a ton of sense. Like, there are options out there that make sense for Kirk Cousins, and the Falcons need to let this man free.
Kirk Cousins needs to let the Falcons free. He's the one with the no trade clause. He has all the power here to force something to happen, right?
Well, we haven't heard that there was a trade on the table and he nixed it. I don't think he would do that.
No, but he like, if those negotiations begin, he will be in on the table and he will hold veto power over the whole thing, which I think allows you to like click off a whole bunch of teams as possible landing spots. Anybody who drafts somebody, this is why I'm with Aaron. I don't think this happens before the draft, because if you, if you start talking to the Giants and then the Giants trade or draft somebody, he will immediately veto the whole thing. So you need somebody that doesn't like, this is the whole deal of Kirk Cousins. He wants security and commitment. This is always what he wants. This is why he always had fully guaranteed deals in Minnesota. He wrote a book, like an autobiography, and in it, his like the main theme was how much he valued security and safety, not necessarily physical safety, but like knowing where he's going to be. He doesn't want to be one of those NFL players that moves to a new state every year. So who can give him that becomes the question. So you talk about, the Cleveland Browns, will they give him security or will they make him like compete with Deshaun Watson, who's stuck on that team? Will a team like the Giants give him security or make him compete with a rookie? He doesn't want to do that. So I'm wondering if maybe, Tyler, your Tennessee Titans are a possible landing spot here. If they trade down, they decide they're not into either of these quarterbacks, and then they decide they're going to move forward with Kirk Cousins and a whole bunch of extra draft picks and try to move it on this way. But I feel like for Kirk, it behooves him to not do this right now. Like, I think Kirk is perfectly happy to wait. And I think if you're the Falcons, you want to be rid of this contract so you can do stuff in free agency. They're second to last in cap space right now. There are situations we're going to talk about later in the show that they can't get in on that they maybe really would want to because they're stuck with this Kirk Cousins contract. So I think we've got the hostage situation backwards. And I've been that hostage. Okay, Aaron, I get it. I've been where you have. I've stood where you have stood. It gets better. Trust me.
Yeah, well, I think that you saying that it wouldn't happen until the draft is actually right on, because I think another thing that will create more interest is how things play out in the draft. There is a swath of day 2 quarterbacks that could be Will Howard and Kyle McCord and Jackson Dart and Quinn Ewers and, on.
I don't think any of those
like
guys dissuade Cousins, but sure.
Right. But I just think that if a team is like, okay, we're going to get one of those guys on day 2, and then you get to the end of day 2 and maybe you didn't get one of them. Well, now you might be more likely to give up a 5th round pick instead of a 6th round pick for Kirk Cousins. Or you may be more likely to give up a late 4th round pick compared to a 6th round pick for Kirk Cousins. So I think for the Falcons, while you're right, they would love to do this now for the financial reasons and to clear their books of the contract. I think when you look at it in terms of draft compensation and the value that they could get back, they'll probably have more leverage during the draft as well, which appeases Kirk Cousins so he can have the lay of the land. So when you said that, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. I do think this is something that would happen more likely in draft time. But just for the purposes of the discussion, if you were the Giants and you're being, playing the waiting game with Aaron Rodgers,
jerked around by Aaron Rodgers, who's clearly you're his third choice.
Exactly. Or you're the Browns.
He's going to retire before he plays for you.
Where you've traded for Kenny Pickett. You're looking at Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco, stuff like. I don't think that, or Russell Wilson. I think Kirk Cousins would be a better fit for the Browns right now than the Giants, and I think that would give the Kirk Cousins a better situation as well.
But isn't Deshaun Watson such a thorn? Like, isn't it such an elephant in the room? If you bring in Kirk Cousins and you ask him to compete with Deshaun Watson, I don't think he does that.
He's torn his Achilles twice in 6 months. Like maybe this is.
And he's got a no trade clause. He can tell you, I don't care.
Right, but I don't think he's going to be medically available to play the entire season. So I'm not even factoring in Deshaun Watson's presence because he is going to be out with an Achilles tear. He tore it twice, had it fixed and then tore it again. I'm just, maybe this is the wrong way to look at it, but I'm factoring out Deshaun Watson for the entire season. So that's not even part of my calculus.
But what about the next 2 years of the deal? That's kind of what I'm getting at. He doesn't want to be a one year guy.
Well, I think they're going to cut Deshaun Watson in 2026 and just do the Russell Wilson, do the Aaron Rodgers, and just take your medicine, eat the dead money, and do what you have to do. I guess I just don't see Deshaun Watson ever playing for the Browns ever again. So maybe I'm naive to think that way, but that's how I'm viewing it.
No. That would solve that problem. The only other consideration here is the money is a lot different for the Falcons pre-June 1st and post-June 1st. There are pros and cons to deciding whether to do it before or after June 1st, but if they decide to do it after, that could also be a big giant slowdown on this whole thing. But all I see right now, like the most sure thing I see about this is a whole bunch of reasons not to be in a rush on both sides. And I still just want to defer to the draft. I could see the Browns doing it. I kind of think the Browns are going to take a rookie.
Yeah, but I don't know that it's going to be at number 2. I think there's a lot of options on day 2 in the draft, and I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch. Obviously, one of the most interesting developments that's going to happen throughout the offseason is what happens with the Browns at number 2.
I think it's the only way for them to not get everybody fired in the next year or two is to have a quarterback that plays well that you can afford. Like the only way to get a quarterback that plays well that they can afford is to hit on a draft pick. So I think there's going to be a Hail Mary at 2. And plus, when you have a rookie quarterback, if you go 5-12, everybody gets a little bit more of a leash because, it was just his first year and something like that. And I think everybody there's seat is so scorching lava hot that they're going to start letting that. I know this organization. We've seen this from the Browns. They start letting it seep into their decisions.
Right. Well, we will see how it plays out there. But speaking of an Ohio football team, the Cincinnati Bengals made waves this week, but they need to make some more. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing that big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Gametime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Gametime Picks, their best feature, is a curation that makes it easier to find the best value possible for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater. It's so easy. You just check the Gametime app, and there are going to be amazing deals on huge matchups. And they have a lowest price guarantee where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a better price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. Talked about the Kirk Cousins hostage situation, according to my guy Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons. But now I want to go to another situation where both sides of it are not on the same page, and it's Cincinnati. So Cincinnati got the deals done with Jamar Chase. They got the deals done with T. Higgins. Now they turn their attention to edge rusher Trey Hendrickson, who was maybe the best edge rusher in the NFL last season. And now we're starting to hear reports that the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson are coming back to the table to try to figure things out. And my guy James Rapine from Locked On Bengals talked about that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because on one hand, all of the smoke, the national reports, they make sense. The Bengals have a much clearer cap picture now. We don't know exactly what that is, but they certainly do of where they're at cap space wise. They free up cap space. The report is with both deals, not just T, but T and Jamar. So can you take some of that and throw it at Trey? Naturally, you would have that discussion. Trey Hendrickson would have been the best available pass rusher in this free agency period. A lot of what we've talked about is the pass rush. You don't want to lose Trey. And I don't know if the Bengals ever truly thought that they would get that first round pick for Trey Hendrickson or thought that they would get a reasonable, in their mind, offer that would be tempting enough to deal Trey Hendrickson. You let him test the market just to see. And I get that and understand that. And by the way, he still can, but clearly they haven't gotten an offer that has gotten them close to trading him. I think that's very clear.
I think it's also very clear that they need to trade him. Look, you can't just bring the same exact team back. Like, this team missed the playoffs. You can't just get the band back together. They're treating it like, we got to keep everybody together like they just won a championship. They didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, they need to fix the defense. Yeah, the offense was never the problem there. I mean, they were putting them 500 a game, but they need to fix the defense.
Great. It's great that you got both your wide receivers back and you have your trio on offense locked up for the foreseeable future. But going out and paying more money to Trey Hendrickson as well and signing him up when he's 30 and your defense is in shambles, I'm sorry, that's one step too far for the Bengals' good vibes train. I know that it won't feel great. It won't feel like the last dance, like everybody getting back together, bringing the band back in, but they need to trade Trey Hendrickson, get more draft picks. Here's a point that I want to make here about the draft. Getting more draft picks doesn't increase your hits. Getting more draft picks minimizes the effect of your misses. That's what it is. The more picks you have, the less hurtful it is when you miss on a player, because it's like baseball. Batting 300 in the draft you might actually be pretty good. People would think that sounds terrible, but think Howie Roseman took Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. You know what I mean? Like even the best in the entire world still don't have anywhere near 100% accuracy here. So
the NFL
me,
hits at like
Bengals,
60%. Yeah. Like
the Bengals have not been good at drafting early in the draft recently with Miles Murphy and Dax Hill. They need to give themselves more margin for error on the defensive side of the ball and on the O-line, and they do that with more picks. So I think you trade Trey Hendrickson for maybe a late second round pick and then a fifth or a sixth on top of it. I think that's the best that you can hope for, knowing that you got to give him $30 million a year. And you give yourself some additional draft capital, maybe trade down from 17 in the draft as well. The Bengals need more shots because once you pay all this money to your quarterback and 2 wide receivers, the only way to make that work is to hit in the draft. And the best way to hit in the draft is to have as many picks as possible. Make the trade.
Tyler, I could not disagree more. I think that if this team
it's okay
loses,
to be wrong, Luke.
Like its only good defender, like this was the worst defense in the league.
But that's not good enough. He was great, and the defense was awful. You need more.
Yeah, you need more. The Bengals piss me off so much. They have before these extensions kick in, because the details aren't fully out, so I don't know how they affect cap space. It's not on over the cap yet, but according to over the cap, before the 2 extensions kick in, they had 26
They'll
million
get more
cap space
cap
this year
from these deals,
and they'll get more this year, but it'll eat into 2026 and 2027. Next year they have 140 million to use, and 200. They almost entirely, like all of the cap for 2027. They have 200 million of the projected 311 million cap. Like they have so much money. Use it. Oh my! They're just gonna sit there on their money and suck. I don't have any respect for Mike Brown at all. Like,
it's a cash spend thing, not just a salary cap thing. It's about
the problem.
He's got to give out signing bonus dollars, and that's 3 monster deals that are near the top of the market in the NFL. And the opposite of that is paying a bunch of rookies on rookie contracts. So trading
we're worth $4 billion. Do it.
Listen, I understand what you
have no sympathy,
but
you're worth $4 billion to have a defense. They're gonna have the worst defense in the league again, and it is very possible that it gets even worse, and they're just like speed running Sean Payton mid 2010 Saints, where they have these awesome offenses and then they can't stop a nosebleed. Keeping Jamar Chase and T Higgins in there, keeping that thing together was really important for them, and I get why they prioritized it, but they just absolutely can have their cake and eat it too, and the problem is Mike Brown. Bengals fans should be storming the freaking facility like it's January 6th. Like, they should go absolutely nuts on this. They piss me off so bad, and I'm sorry, trading Trey Hendrickson and saving another $30 million that your owner won't spend for a 5th round pick is not going to fix your problems. You need to actually be a serious organization. Bengals, you are on my list.
Well, serious organization would have paid these guys last year instead of this year. And
100%. And now they're going to lose them, and they're going to have an even worse pass rush. It's going to be the easiest thing in the world to throw against the Cincinnati Bengals. What are you going to, like, what? Joseph Osai is going to be, is their main pass rusher right now.
He's out of there anyway. Miles Murphy, former first.
Miles Murphy, cool. A 5th round pick from Texas Tech. Good. Yeah, just the squad of 5th round picks. Just Legion of Boom this. It'll be fine. This is not a serious organization. They're getting last in the NFC North.
Well, that is a great hot take for another episode later.
Kirk Cousins absolutely brings a Browns team higher than what these Bengals are doing. Screw you guys.
Way to tie it together. Now, we got to go to Luke's
and Bengals fans should be just as mad as I am, by the way. This is for you. You deserve better.
They are. Trust me, they are. But with that being said, Aaron Rodgers is obviously a big topic of conversation right now, and the Vikings' faith in J.J. McCarthy is something that's being discussed quite a bit right now. I'm going to get Luke's answer on both of those things.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about Kirk Cousins' landing spots. We talked about the Bengals trade situation with Trey Hendrickson. Now I want to get into a fun conversation with Luke specifically about the Minnesota Vikings, Aaron Rodgers, all of that. Before we get into it, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Make sure you check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with my guy Tony Wiggins, the barber himself, in the barbershop, breaking down the biggest topics in the NFL. But we still wait for Aaron Rodgers. The Vikings, maybe, the Giants, the Steelers, who's going to get him? I don't really know, but more importantly than anything, we just need Aaron Rodgers to make a decision. And the GOAT, Patricia Traynor from Locked On Giants, put it best.
Explore all his options. But you know what? The Giants have a right to tell him, hey, look, dude, you know, you came to us before the combine or during the combine, whenever it was, and you expressed an interest in playing for us. So we gave you our best offer. Either sign on the dotted line or we're moving on. And, you know, my impression, to be honest with you, is that the Giants are just waiting. You know, they've met with Joe Flacco, they met with Russell Wilson, but nothing has happened. And my biggest concern, and I got to think this is going to be the Giants' concern too, whether they, you know, want to admit it or not, is if they continue to wait on Rodgers, and it doesn't look like, folks, at this point he's going to be here. If they continue to wait on him, they're going to lose out on other options. Guys are going to not sit around and wait for the Giants. I mean, Russell Wilson, if the Giants want him, you know, if he's their backup option, they're not going to. Russell Wilson's not going to sit around and wait for the Giants to wait on Aaron Rodgers. If he gets a decent offer from Cleveland, he'll probably take that offer, and that'll leave the Giants with basically Joe Flacco, which is not a horrible option, but not obviously their first one, or just rolling the dice on a rookie quarterback. So if you're the Giants, you've got the offers on the table. Obviously, the Vikings haven't come at you just yet, or at least as far as I know, as I tape this. Take a hint, make a decision, and get on with it.
Boom. Drop the hammer, Patricia. I love that right there. But
I love the sidebar saying enough is enough. If you're just listening, you missed out on that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and she's right. It's time to move on for everybody. They don't need to wait around. But the question I want to ask you, just so you could reiterate for folks who may not know, scale of 1 to 10, how interested do you think the Vikings truly are in Aaron Rodgers?
Okay. So my understanding, based on all of the reporting, not just the reporting from The Athletic, which is way far outside the reporting that you're getting from everybody else, from Schefter, from Pelissero, from Rappaport, ESPN, like everybody, is that the Vikings are doing due diligence. That's really all it is. And outside of the sort of never say never sense, everybody else is getting the idea that, they like JJ McCarthy too much to screw around with this. Unless he's willing to come in and like be a backup for, cheap or whatever, or they flip on the tape and they see something that they didn't really think that they were going to see or something like that, that they're going to roll with JJ McCarthy. The steam, as it were, is almost entirely coming from Rodgers' camp himself. Aaron Rodgers wants real bad to be a Viking, and the Vikings aren't really that motivated to want him back. That's where I understand that they are. And I think their confidence in JJ McCarthy, I just did a show about this on Locked On Vikings. Their confidence in JJ McCarthy is like the primary holdup for the Vikings. It's the thing preventing them from just being like, oh yeah, sweet, Hall of Famer wants to be on our team, still has a little gas in the tank. Okay, let's go. I don't really trust the gas in the tank that, some of the people, but there are a lot of people, I think, running interference for him and his agent. Yeah. That you can tell where people get their information by the way that they word things, right? So the Vikings the Vikings brass has entirely deferred this decision to Kevin O'Connell. He's earned that with Josh Dobbs, Sam Darnold, all the great QB play that they've gotten out of players that haven't really been able to do that anywhere else. So they said, okay, you clearly got the QB thing down. You make the call. We're not going to touch you. And I think he's taking his time, doing his due diligence. But meanwhile, they're like trading for running backs and signing special teamers. Like they're like not.
I have then. I agree with you. I agree with your slice on it there. I think that J.J. McCarthy and the faith they have in him will lead them to go on with him, and Rodgers won't ultimately be with the Vikings. But the question becomes then, who is the better football team next year? A J.J. McCarthy-led Minnesota Vikings or an Aaron Rodgers Pittsburgh Steelers? Because if it's Pittsburgh, I think the answer is Pittsburgh and Aaron Rodgers. I think they would be a better team than Minnesota. I know that Minnesota has a great supporting cast, great system, but we're essentially talking about a rookie quarterback. And I think Pittsburgh has enough on their roster and their coaching staff that Aaron Rodgers, I think Aaron Rodgers is better than Russell Wilson. I know that we've disagreed on that before, but I think the improvement in quarterback play
showed more last year.
In the general roster and the situation, and Aaron Rodgers not being able to bully an organization into stupid decisions because the Steelers are such an upstanding franchise with a bold head coach. I think that the Steelers with Rodgers would actually be better than J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. And that doesn't mean that I think J.J. McCarthy will be a bust or anything. It's just he didn't get to play.
I think the Steelers are the only team that I think this is even remotely a serious question for. If he goes to the Giants, like, yeah, if he goes to the Browns, like, I'm not giving any attention
even
to
that.
Even
he won't consider the Browns.
But I get it. The hey, there's this unknown about JJ McCarthy, so I'm certainly not going to tell anybody that picks the Steelers like that they're being stupid or anything. But I am going to say I'm going to be a homer about this. I'm absolutely going to say Vikings because what I understand about JJ McCarthy and the way the organization feels about JJ McCarthy is not an unknown at all. And that's one of the big disconnects between the teams and the fans of those teams is that the fans don't get to see it. We got to see a couple of clips out of training camp. Maybe you got to go to one, on a Tuesday afternoon that you got to take a half day off of work. And then like one preseason game where he threw an interception and a couple of touchdowns that we liked. The team has seen so much more than that. They've seen him every single day. They saw all the work he did throughout training camp. They saw all the work, all the practice film that they've broken down. They also got to see him in the room during his rehab, the way that he engaged with game plans on the whiteboard and the way that he helped Sam Darnold prepare and like
they know
the way
how
that he was
far along
engaged.
he is mentally.
They know how far along he is mentally. They know how far along he is physically, which reporting is telling us that his rehab is probably pretty close to over. He's targeting the beginning of the spring program, the pre-draft spring program, conditioning program to be like fully cleared. So maybe he'll be done by then. Maybe he'll be done after the draft, but either way, well before like camp. So they are very confident in him. And I think the quarterbacks we have seen succeed in Minnesota with the supporting cast, like the bar is pretty low for how good JJ McCarthy has to be for this team to not just be like a decent team, not go 10 wins and wild card like the Steelers always find a way to, but to be a true contender, like a true, these guys were, top 2 in Super Bowl odds at points last year with Sam Darnold. You just got to be better. Like you got to be better than Joshua Dobbs. I don't feel like that's that hard of a bar to clear when you, and all of the infrastructure that made that happen is still in place. Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, Kevin O'Connell. And by the way, an upgraded offensive line from free agency. So yeah, like he doesn't have to be Joe Burrow 2021 to have that kind of offense. So I'm going with the Vikings. I get it. There's a lot of ifs there. I'm taking a lot of stuff kind of on faith, but I have that faith, and I think that they've earned that faith.
Well, I think you're going with a coaching staff that's been better recently and going with a roster that is really, really good as well. So as long as JJ McCarthy is solid, then I don't think that you're out of bounds. I don't think it's overly
like this is a hard question, I think.
Yeah, right. It's a fun question. It's an interesting question. And hopefully by the next time we talk, Aaron Rodgers will actually pick a team and we can not guess on what team he might be with. But with that being said,
Rodgers to Pickens and DK would be really cool. Although I still would rather see Russell Wilson do that.
And Rodgers arguing with DK and Pickens would be interesting. And
Rodgers, oh my God, Rodgers and George Pickens on a podcast would change the political landscape of the country.
What an incredible chemistry experiment it would be. But with that being said, that is going to do it for us today. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain Luke Braun. Thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.